Have you ever considered the peculiar power you possess without even realizing it? Not a spotlight, not a single applause, not a big introduction. The mere mention of your name causes someone's entire universe to shift slightly. Their pulse falters. Their minds become disorganized. Isn't that funny? You consider yourself to be normal as you go through life. One more face among the throng, just one more tale lost in the clutter. However, your chaos is someplace in the tranquil recesses of someone else's mind. Their chest is constricted because of you. They smile foolishly at nothing because of you. In a room full of incomprehensible people, what's the best part? It's not even visible to you. When they pronounce your name, it doesn't sound any different to you. The storm you generate simply by being there is not felt by you. Ironically, the most dangerous sort of power is the one you are unaware you possess. You believe that the only things that count are what you do. The significant events, the loud statements, the clear decisions. You've been taught that, correct? It must be observed, quantified, and praised. But what if I told you that what you do when everyone is looking isn't what makes you so powerful? It's what you do to people while you're not even present. You leave a small, silent quake in someone's chest. That peculiar change in their attitude, when your name appears as if it were a secret that no one was meant to know. The way it operates is amusing. You might be passing someone, not even realizing they were there. Nevertheless, you end up changing their entire day in some way. A phrase, a look. You've already forgotten that moment. And there they are, like a broken record, replaying it, looking for significance in something you didn't even consider. You return home, go on and live your life. Proceed as if nothing has occurred. Someone is trapped in that moment you unintentionally created somewhere. Have you ever wondered how many times people have muttered your name in places you've never been? How many times has it been typed, deleted, and then typed once more, and never dispatched? How many individuals have stopped in the middle of the day simply because something made them think of you? When you consider it, it's almost unsettling. You're only experiencing one aspect of reality. Additionally, you are completely different in the eyes of another person. Larger, greater volume, more risky. You don't even need to make an effort. That's the part that ought to unnerve you. No attempt is made, not a big show, just you being who you are. And for some reason, it's sufficient to upset someone's emotional equilibrium. When they hear your name, their hearts begin to race as if they are fleeing something, or in the direction of anything. They're not even sure which one frightens them more. People want to think they are in charge of their emotions, you see. They determine who is important, who is not, who is allowed to remain, and who is eliminated. But then you appear, or worse, you don't, and everything they believe to be under their control begins to elude them. At 2 in the morning, you turn into that unexpected notion, that interruption during a crucial task. They can't quite put their finger on the silent ache without coming out as absurd. What's the cruelest part? You may never find out. It's possible that you won't notice how their face changes when they hear your name. The hesitancy in their speech may never be audible to you. They make an effort to sound regular, but something inside of them is acting differently. The strain won't ever be felt. The expectation, the mayhem you created would set out a more discussion. Another fleeting moment that ends just as fast as it began. But it's something completely different to them. Something more substantial. Something that persists. Something that persists. Something that despite their best efforts cannot be disregarded. Don't you genuinely think that your existence is insignificant? Just a body occupying space. Just another individual lost in the din of a world too noisy to be bothered. You've been feeding yourself that falsehood repeatedly, because it's simpler that way. It's easier to believe you don't matter than to understand that you may subtly change someone's entire reality by simply entering a room. It doesn't need to be theatrical. No entrance in slow motion. There isn't a cheap movie scenario where eyes lock across the room. It might be subtle at times, nearly imperceptible. You intervene, keep quiet, do nothing out of the ordinary. However, something changes, straightens up for no apparent reason. Another person abruptly loses their train of thought. There's a change in the air. It seems to be holding its breath. It's waiting for something it doesn't fully understand. The thing about presence is that it doesn't matter what you display, it has to do with how people feel. And emotions, they're messy, I see. Erratic, totally uncontrollable. They cannot be scripted. I can't replicate them flawlessly. Once they begin to seep through the cracks, they are uncontrollable. You may believe that you are only existing, just killing time. However, you are a bother to someone else. Everything else fades into the background as a beautiful, scary disturbance occurs. Have you ever noticed that certain people find it difficult to focus on you for extended periods of time, or the way they act as though they don't see you? However, their focus keeps returning like an irresistible magnet. It's almost funny then, seeing their attempts to maintain a normal demeanor while something inside of them is subtly falling apart. They'll chuckle excessively, talk a bit too quickly, may remain utterly silent out of fear of what might come out if they speak too much. And you? All you're doing is standing, unaware. Perhaps you find them strange, uncomfortable, or preoccupied. Perhaps you don't even consider it. However, the tempest beneath is invisible to you. The way your presence interferes with their thoughts, increases the volume of their heartbeat, makes their feelings seem a bit too near to the surface. It doesn't make sense. It's not scheduled. It simply occurs. That's the authority you possess without authorization. Nobody gave it to you. You were not taught how to use it. Nevertheless, there are times of sculpting, affecting emotions, causing unexpected reactions. To be heard, you don't have to talk. To make an impact, you don't have to take action. To be heard, you don't have to talk. To make an impact, you don't have to. Is sufficient to make an impression just by being present, sometimes more profound than words could possibly express. What's the most peculiar aspect? The whole thing is inconsistent. Not everyone will be affected in his way by you. The majority of people will walk past without giving it any thought, totally unaltered, totally unaffected. However, there are those few, uncommon, unfortunate people who experience everything a bit too strongly while you're present. They don't just notice you. It is sensed like an unavoidable heartbeat. Really, it's almost cruel, as they didn't select it. They didn't wake up one day and say, yes, this person will have this kind of hold on me. It simply occurred. A voice, somewhere between a look. Something clicked for a second. They are now forced to deal with it. Their minds go into overdrive whenever you're around, looking for purpose, for indications, for anything to cling to. Additionally, you don't even need to make an effort to keep it up. That's why it's so risky. Effect that is effortless. Accidental control. You could leave. For days, vanish. Weeks, longer still. Even now, your presence continues to reverberate in invisible ways. It's in the way they recall the atmosphere of the space when you were there, in the way that when you're not there, silence feels heavier. You may believe that control is the source of power, from supremacy, from making enough noise to attract attention. However, genuine power, the type that penetrates someone's flesh and remains theirs silent, it doesn't make an announcement. It doesn't request authorization. It simply is. Creating feelings in the background while you move on with your life, totally oblivious to the weight you bear each time you enter another person's world. Don't you want to believe that influence is something loud? Speeches, bold actions. You may point to obvious changes and say, yeah, that was me. It facilitates comprehension, easier to manage. However, the reality is far less cozy than that. The actual impact, the sticky sword, is silent. Silently, it slides in, undetected, like an idea that doesn't belong yet won't go away. You can't even count how many times you've done it, left a lasting impression on individuals without ever realizing it. Something you stated and Paffy did. You've already forgotten that moment. And there it is, inhabiting another person's mind as if it were its own. They move it about, flip it over, examine it from every perspective, attempting to comprehend the reasons behind its impact on them. You've moved on too. For you, that moment has vanished, swallowed up by 100 other ideas that seem more significant. However, it lingers for them. It expands. It begins to influence how kids perceive the world, feel, and occasionally be fed, all because to something you didn't even think was important. That's the secret aspect that nobody discusses. Control is not always a sign of influence. There are instances when it appears to be a tiny change in direction that no one can identify. You enter someone's inner world without their knowledge or consent. They build a silent point of reference without even realizing it. They may begin to act, think, and behave differently. They would also be unable to provide a definitive response if you asked them why. They would dismiss it, attributing it to coincidence, time, or mood. However, there is a hint of you in it deep down, a fingerprint that you accidentally left behind. The ease with which it occurs is almost disturbing. There's no reason to attempt. Planning is not necessary. Something can be planted by simply being with someone for a sufficient amount of time, even if it's just for a short while. A viewpoint, an emotion, an unanswered question, it takes hold and subtly affects choices they haven't even made yet. The worst part is that you can't watch it happen. You don't get to see the transformations, the minor adjustments that become more significant. You are not given credit. You are not held accountable. Clear's throat. In someone else's narrative, you simply exist as this unseen force. A supporting character who changed the storyline in some way without ever taking center stage. Even if it's only somewhat, there are those who have changed as a result of you. Perhaps anything you said gave them more self-assurance. Perhaps they began to doubt things they had previously accepted without inquiry. Or perhaps you made them more wary, guarded, and conscious of things they would prefer to overlook. Influence isn't always kind. It can occasionally cut deeper than you might anticipate. And that's where the complexity lies. Because you have no control over how other people perceive you. You have no control over what aspects of you remain with them. It can be your quiet or your generosity. You may have planned it, or you may not have intended it at all. It takes on a life of its own once it's felt and out there. They may repeat your words in other tones, give them meanings you never thought about, or create whole stories out of things that were just passing thoughts to you. And gradually, without your knowledge, they begin to transform under the influence of something you were unaware you had given them. Clear's throat? Isn't that weird? How to influence someone's inner world without ever entering it. How you can influence their choices, feelings, and viewpoint while leading your own life without even realizing the part you're playing in theirs. You're not simply going through people's life as you believe. You're leaving behind remnants, pieces of yourself that end up in locations you won't see, impact events you won't see, and end up in tales you won't hear. You'll never really understand how deep it goes, which is the most unnerving aspect. Don't you believe that a name is merely a label? Something that sits on documents, something that individuals use to grab your attention, something that fades into the background of regular conversations. Easy, not hot-forced. However, that is only true in cases where it is meaningless. Everything changes as soon as it begins to bear weight. Because a name is more than simply a sound, it's affiliation, it's recollection, it's emotion condensed into a few words that have the power to affect someone more deeply than you might think. Out of all the innumerable words that exist in the world, your name has the ability to interrupt someone in the middle of their thoughts and divert their focus from everything else as if it were the only thing that now counts. When you're not present, it seeps into talks. At first, it's quiet, almost timid, as if the speaker isn't sure how much of themselves they're going to share. The pause comes next, that brief, quite imperceptible pause when everything it is not audible to you. It is not visible to you. However, it is present each and every time they say your name. It's funny how tone affects everything. When spoken by various persons, the same name might have entirely distinct meanings. For some, it's just another word in a sentence. However, it seems slower and heavier to someone else, as if they are carrying something that they are unable to adequately describe. Their voices change, becoming softer, occasionally tense, as if they're attempting to contain something. You're not even aware of it. It's just your name to you. You may have heard it 1,000 times or more. Repetition has worn it down and diminished its impact. However, it hasn't for them. It still contains something raw and unadulterated for them. The moment it's said or even considered, it still has an effect on their chest. Have you ever noticed how your name can linger in someone's thoughts, even when they are completely silent? Just a notion that came to mind at the wrong moment. No sound, no speech. They can be doing anything, trying to organize their thoughts or concentrating on something crucial. And there it is. Your name seems to own the place as it cuts through everything. Nor is it always gentle. Sometimes it gives them a buzz, a fleeting glimpse of something they weren't prepared for. At other times, it lingers more slowly and heavily, like a weight bearing down on their minds. They may become silent for no apparent cause, or smile for no apparent reason. Depending on what you've come to mean to them, they may react differently to the same name. Clears throat. You don't see that part. The layers on top of something so basic. The way your name becomes a trigger for feelings they find difficult to manage. It's no longer just about you. It's all about the connections they have made with you. Every emotion, every moment, and every unsaid thought are all connected and condensed into something as tiny as a name. The most bizarre thing is that they might attempt to conceal it, say your name informally, as if it has no significance or additional meaning. However, there's always something beneath the surface, a flicker of something in their eyes, a slight shift in expression, an excessively long pause. Not paying attention. Subtle details are simple to overlook. You're not paying attention, though. You're living your life and hearing your name the same way you've always heard it, without hesitation or weight. You don't notice a difference. You fail to notice how it resonates differently depending on who is saying it and why, or how it falls on specific individuals, because it's just a name to you. Clears throat. However, it's never that simple to someone else. Have you ever noticed that the connections with the loudest volume are never the most important ones? It's the quiet ones. The ones that don't announce themselves, don't demand attention, don't make a scene. The ones that disappear beneath the surface and take up residence in a remote location that is hidden from view. That's the interesting part. That's where the danger arises, because words aren't necessary for every connection. Not all bonds require an explanation, a label, or even recognition. It simply exists at times. Something invisible keeps drawing the two individuals back into the same orbit as they move through their own distinct worlds while acting as if nothing is there. Nothing to say, no admissions. Even though neither of them has the courage to express it aloud, they both know in silence that something feels different. The lengths people will go to ignore it are almost comical. They will appear normal, converse about everyday topics, laugh when appropriate, and maintain a flawless surface balance. But there's chaos underneath, uncontrollable thoughts, emotions they had not anticipated, a continuous sense of other people's presence even when they are not physically present. And the quiet, oh, the quiet speaks louder than words ever could. The way conversations stop for an excessive amount of time, the length of time that eye contact lasts before there would be a block break. The way something lingers in the air, incomplete, like a sentence that no one dares to finish. It's all there, disguising itself as nothing while hiding in plain sight. When a connection is that genuine, big gestures are not necessary, no grandiose proclamations, no frantic attempts to prove anything. It's not overt, it's in the little things. The way someone observes aspects of you that others fail to notice, the way their attitude changes a little when you're around or not. The most peculiar aspect is that it can exist without ever becoming apparent. It can remain trapped in that silent area, never stepping over the boundary into a clearly defined area. It seems as though both individuals are conscious of it and simultaneously terrified of the consequences of admitting it. Because something like that changes when you put words to it. It becomes irreversibly real. Rather, it remains concealed, secure, clears throat in a perverted manner, unsaid, unaltered, yet vibrantly alive. Growing in the background, feeding on fleeting moments, glances, and incomplete ideas, it doesn't require care to endure. If anything, it does better without it. Even if you don't really interact for days, weeks, or even longer, the connection doesn't deteriorate as it ought to. It waits for the tiniest trigger to remind you both that it is still present, while remaining silent and patient. A familiar circumstance, a haphazard memory, or even just an unexpected thought. When it does, it happens instantly. That slight change once more. You can't quite put your finger on it, but you can't ignore it. Clears throat. It's as if something simply clicked back into position without requesting, no caution. It was there, it's out. It doesn't make sense. It does not adhere to regulations. That's why it's so unnerving. Just because something is complicated or inconvenient doesn't mean you can control it, predict it, or make it go away. It doesn't care what either of you believe should happen. It exists on its own terms. Perhaps that's why it doesn't say anything, because you run the risk of shattering it the instant you attempt to define it, bring it into the light, or give it structure. Or worse, you run the risk of discovering that it was never intended to fit into anything typical in the first place. Thus it lingers in that silent place, unsaid but indisputable, influencing thoughts and emotions and bringing two people together in a way that neither of them can fully comprehend or see. You don't actually see it, do you? That small, silent lie you tell yourself on a daily basis, that you're not that significant, that you're just a passing figure in a world where everyone is too busy to give a damn. It keeps you cozy, keeps you small, and prevents you from realizing something that, if you allowed it to sink in, might actually shake you a little. Clears throat. In actuality, your value doesn't immediately become apparent. It doesn't demand to be acknowledged by standing in front of you. It waits patiently and silently in places you never think to look. You're measuring yourself incorrectly. By your successes and failures, the amount of attention you receive, and the ease with which people come and go. You reduce your worth to figures, experiences, and results that you can cling to. But that is not how worth operates. It exists in ways that don't fit into tidy little boxes you can label and comprehend, slipping through those definitions like they're nothing. Because while you're preoccupied with wondering where you fit in and whether you matter, someone else has already provided an answer to that question without you even participating in the discussion. You are not unimportant to them. You are not easily forgotten. Something stuck with you. Something that left a lasting impression without any effort or awareness. Isn't that almost ironic? The way you ignore yourself while others find it difficult to do the same. You carry doubt with you as if it were a fact rather than just a passing thought. Somewhere else in the meantime, you are connected to something significant, an emotion, a recollection, a time that was distinct from the rest of their day. Additionally, you'll never see it the way they do. The exact weight of what you stand for in their eyes will never be felt by you. You are just you to yourself. You've lived with yourself long enough to become accustomed to everything you are and everything you're not, so it's familiar, predictable, and simple to ignore. However, you are something else to them, something they cannot totally ignore, something they do not fully comprehend. That is the portion that remains concealed. You don't always see your clears throat value reflected back to you. Sometimes it's more subdued than that, and it doesn't always manifest as compliments, clear gratitude, or something you can point to and say, there it is. Sometimes it exists completely outside of your awareness, in the way someone perceives you when you're not there, in the way your presence, or even the thought of it, affects them. You may believe that you have done nothing noteworthy or noteworthy, but memory doesn't function according to your expectations. Moments are not filtered the same way you do. It clings to what makes a change, what feels different, and what makes even the smallest impression. And sometimes you become that mark without even realizing it. It is not required to be flawless. It doesn't need to be exceptional. That's where you make a mistake. You believe that value must be acquired by doing something significant and indisputable. However, it's often ingrained in the tiniest, most neglected aspects of your identity. Your voice tone, your manner of responding, and your presence are all slightly different from the others. There are already signs of you living in places you can't see while you're out there trying to prove yourself and become something that at last feels adequate. Subtle reminders that you were sufficient in situations you weren't even aware of, and that you mattered in ways you didn't plan. You won't sense it though, not entirely, not in the manner that they do, because you're too preoccupied with looking for evidence everywhere, too preoccupied with what's lacking to recognize what is already present. Whether you believe in it or not, it quietly exists, hidden just out of reach. Have you ever paused to consider what you leave behind when you leave a moment behind? Not the obvious things, conversations, or actions that people can readily identify and decide. I'm referring to the residue, the imperceptible mark that lingers in the atmosphere long after you're gone and subtly becomes ingrained in someone else's thoughts as if it were meant to be there. Energy is a funny word, isn't it? Until you start paying attention to it, it sounds ambiguous and nearly meaningless, until you understand that every interaction, no matter how minor, has a deeper meaning. A tone, an emotion, a presence that doesn't simply vanish when you turn away. It remains. A tone, an emotion, a presence that it doesn't spread. It reverberates. Sometimes it stays in someone else's mind longer than it ought to. You might leave a room without giving it any thought, believing it to be just another moment in a typical day. However, for someone else, that same moment might repeatedly recur because of how it felt rather than what was said. Something about you didn't quite fit with everything else they were accustomed to, and the atmosphere changed. You leave that beast at the emotional fragments that don't make sense on their own but won't go away. It's when someone abruptly stops talking after you leave, as if your absence created a space they weren't ready for. They attempt to ignore it, divert their attention, and move on, but some of it persists. You have no control over that. The unpleasant reality is that you have no control over what aspects of yourself endure, fade, or become something that someone remembers long after the event is It might be as easy as the way you either looked at them or didn't, the way you spoke in a casual tone, or the way you opted for silence over words, and sometimes the loudest thing you leave behind is silence. It closes the gaps, allows for interpretation, and provides individuals with just enough room to construct their own meaning. It may seem that if you don't say anything, you won't leave anything, but sometimes the opposite is true. There's too much left, or too many options, too many unsolved questions that linger longer than any definitive statement could. Your energy functions in this way. It doesn't adhere to neat rules or predictable patterns, nor is it constrained by logic. It attaches itself to moments you didn't think were significant, seeps into unexpected places, and remains there, subtly affecting someone's emotions even when you're not there. At first, they might not even notice. It begins subtly. A feeling here, a thought there, some random moment when they can't quite put their finger on why something makes them think of you. Then it develops gradually, almost imperceptibly, until it becomes unavoidable. Persistent but not overwhelming or consuming, similar to a background noise that never completely goes away. The odd thing is that they might attempt to justify it, persuade themselves it is insignificant, unimportant, and will eventually fade like everything. However, some things don't fade as they should. Certain impressions linger longer and become ingrained in their thought processes, reactions, and memories, all of that from your brief presence. You leave with the impression that you have left nothing, no impact, no trace, and nothing to cling to. However, that isn't how it operates. You leave fragments of yourself in places you'll never return to, in thoughts you'll never fully comprehend, and in situations that persist long after you've moved on. And somewhere, unbeknownst to you, the energy you left behind is still there, influencing a thought, changing an emotion, lingering in a place where you were once present, and somehow never entirely vanishing.